Sure. So this was the Meteors is a term that the Italian media had for all the riders who were unfortunate to be born at a time where their career came just after Fausto Coppi. Fausto Coppi died and left a huge hole in Italian cycling. Um, and these riders, and there were probably a dozen or so riders who formed his bracket, were from the go in their careers, any success, any sign of talent, and the press went mad, and they were the next Fausto Coppi, and invariably it didn't happen.
From Peloton Magazine, this is Aérogramme Talks, presented by Pinarello. Writer and friend Paul Maunder is a regular contributor to the pages of Peloton Magazine. His latest book, published by Bloomsbury, is titled The Wind at My Back, and is a deeply personal exploration of what it means to ride a bicycle. We talked to Paul about Hemingway, D.H. Lawrence, Venice, Coppi, and all things Italy. His features in the current issue of Peloton Magazine, issue 94, is available now. Paul, I wanted to talk about a few of the features that you worked on for our Italian issue this year. The first being War, Beauty, and Love. Just a great story, by the way, of the lake region in Italy and some of the numerous authors and writers that took solace there and visited there. So let's just start there. How did you research this story, and maybe tell me some of the things that struck you as you were working on it?
Yeah, sure. So, I've been to Lake Garda a couple of times and always loved the place, and when I tried to go to countries, I tried to sort of make the literary connections and work out the best books about those areas. But I hadn't quite realised. I think a lot of people associate the Italian lakes and maybe the Swiss lakes too with the Romantic poets. But I hadn't quite realised until I looked at this into the books around this area that there's a quite strong connection to American writers and to Hemingway in particular, Henry James, and D.H. Lawrence, who obviously is British, but I think has quite a large American readership. So I just wanted to sort of see if there's any connections there about those writers and their experiences of that area. And so obviously we're on lockdown, so there was no travelling to lakes to do the research, unfortunately. But there's a couple of great books which I can recommend to any listeners. There's D.H. Lawrence and Italy, in which which there's a Penguin edition which actually combines his book about Lake Garda, Twilight in Italy, his book about Sardinia, and also Etruscan places, which is a great read. And then for any Hemingway fans out there, there's a good book called Hemingway in Italy by Richard Owen, which, as the name suggests, sort of goes through his whole life and work with its connection to Italy, because I think a lot of us, I always connect him with Cuba and Spain and, of course, Florida, but actually he had a very strong link to Italy.
Great. And going even further back, Catullus, I didn't realize his family was from Verona and he had a villa close to Lake Garda. Is that correct?
He was sort of famous for love poetry and was one of the great Roman poets. And his family were from the area. And I think that shows how long is the legacy of affluent people from Venice and Milan who have villas on the lakes and use it as their holiday home. I think Catullus was famously love struck for someone called Lesbia, so perhaps he just wanted to get away from his unrequited crush by going to the lake.
And then you mentioned Hemingway and A Farewell to Arms. Maybe speak a little bit more on your research, what you discovered.
Well, Hemingway, famously started off in, I think, the Midwest, Chicago and Kansas as a reporter, but was hungry for adventure. So he, first opportunity he could, I think he was about 18 years old, he zipped off to Italy, volunteered to drive ambulances for the Red Cross during the First World War. where Italy were fighting the Austro-Hungarians. There was a very bitter and strongly fought front between Austria and Italy. It kept sort of yo-yoing back all the way back up into the mountains and the Alps, and then suddenly the Austrians would push back towards Venice. And Hemingway wasn't really happy just with driving ambulances, and wanted to get near the front, and volunteered to be one of the guys who brought cigarettes and chocolate up to the Italian soldiers at the front. So he, on a bike, I believe, went to the front, and for a while was doing that. And then at a place called Fossalta di Piave, quite a small town near Venice, he was did his delivery. There was a very strong, very heavy firefight going on, and as he returned, a mortar bomb landed close to him. The soldier next to him died. Hemingway was quite seriously injured, but still had the sort of wherewithal and the strength to rescue another injured soldier and drag him back towards the ambulance. And then the Austrians ripped across with some machine gun fire. And those bullets went into Hemingway's legs, and he still managed to keep going for another 100 yards or so, dragging this other soldier back towards safety. And I think he was then evacuated to Milan to a hospital, and then had a couple of weeks recuperating at Stresa in Lake Maggiore, and that's where I think his classic "Farewell to Arms" was kind of dreamt up in that period. But really, that experience marked him for his whole life.
I mentioned, Paul, that we were able to track down numerous images from the JFK library of Hemingway in Italy, so people will look forward to seeing that. I'm going to move quickly to another feature that you wrote for this issue, titled "The Meteors." Maybe just give us a little bit of history and background on that piece, and then we'll let the readers, when they get the issue, read it in full.
Sure. So this was the Meteors is a term that the Italian media had for all the riders who were unfortunate to be born at a time where their career came just after Fausto Coppi. Fausto Coppi died and left a huge hole in Italian cycling. And these riders, and there were probably a dozen or so riders who fall into this bracket, were from the go in their careers, any success, any sign of talent, and the press went mad, and they were the next Fausto Coppi, and invariably it didn't happen because it was so hard to live up to Fausto Coppi's palmares and his sort of charisma. But also in the piece, I've tried to just outline that really they were on hiding to nothing, because even if they'd been the most amazing rider, actually the agency of television in the 60s onwards meant that no rider could be Fausto Coppi because no one could be that enigmatic. And really the Italian Tifosi had a different relationship with the sport from the middle of the century onwards. It was no longer a sort of mystical, enigmatic sport that came through your village. It was just another sport you watched on television. So, yeah, poor people, but yeah, that's we all got to watch better TVs for it. So there you go.
As we talked about briefly before our interview, I was wondering if you'd be open to reading your personal piece about Venice, which is titled "A Postcard to Venice."
Yeah, sure. Okay. A Postcard to Venice. For the last few years, my family and I have taken our summer holiday in Venice. We stay on the Lido di Jesolo, a long promontory of land at the edge of the lagoon, with miles of sandy beaches facing the warm, gentle waters of the Adriatic. Bribing the kids with promises of Venetian masks and spectacular gelato, we take a ferry past the candy-coloured buildings of the Lido and the lush gardens of the Biennale, then thread a needle between all the various watercraft, piloted by men in sunglasses, talking on their phones, to dock at San Zaccaria. Once we've dragged the kids away from stalls selling cheap plastic souvenirs, the aim is to escape the chaos of the Piazza San Marco as quickly as possible. In Venice, it doesn't take long to get away from the crowds, and it doesn't take long to get lost. Whether or not you know where you're going, a walk has a certain rhythm. In the shadowed alleyways, you continuously turn left and right, every so often emerging into a sun-bleached square with a cafe and a church. Away from the centre, there are quiet streets with barely a person around, all houses shuttered and dark. There is always building work going on, a reminder of the city's fragility, and some of the canals are lined not with gondolas, but with low-slung barges carrying sand or timber. Venice is unique not only in its geography. It's the only city I can think of that is 1/3 museum piece, 1/3 living city, 1/3 playground for the rich, famous and arty. Perhaps this multifaceted nature is why I find something different every time I visit. A grey day brings a sense of melancholy, of lost wealth and long-forgotten parties. The August heat can be oppressive, making one want to escape into the lagoon on a speedboat with a beautiful woman at your side. And a visit to the Collezione Peggy Guggenheim reminds one of all those who have trodden the same paving stones in the years past. Hemingway, Wilde, Miro, Picasso. This sense of shifting identity is why so many artists come here, and why Venice inspires many great works. Every city has an identity, but Venice is so layered, so rich. It is your enigmatic great aunt who has 1,000 stories, if only she'd tell them. With its power and influence as a republic long vanished, and its buildings slowly sinking, Venice's beauty is stunning but shallow. One senses darkness underneath the surface. Walk through deserted streets at night, and you'll find yourself glancing over your shoulder. Countless books and films have used the city as a romantic backdrop, but the most memorable are those that have played on its inherent creepiness. Now the city is quiet. As Italy's appalling outbreak of coronavirus took hold, the authorities prematurely ended the carnival and closed the city to visitors. The restaurants around San Marco are closed. The flocks of pigeons have no silly tourists to perch on. No boats on the canals means the water, usually a murky green, has become clearer. The sediment, usually churned up by traffic, has settled. Fish and crabs have been seen. A pair of swans were filmed gliding under a bridge. Air pollution has fallen. And while some have written of this resurgence of nature as a positive side effect of the pandemic, it doesn't reassure me. Venice, more than most cities, is an expression of human ambition and ego and determination. Once one of the most powerful places on the planet, its wealth came from its pivotal position on the east-west trade routes. Venice's riches may have shifted from business to culture, but it has always thrived on the vivacity and elan of its people. The cafes should be serving coffees with those little caramelised biscuits on the saucer. The gondoliers should be shocking tourists with their prices. The carabinieri should be steering their boats down the Grand Canal. Those little churches should still be a cool oasis away from the crowds. Venice has seen a lot, come through it all, and its life will return this time too. I'll be there again, just another sweaty English tourist, hopelessly lost and in love.
That is a really wonderful piece. We hope you enjoyed this interview. You can pick up the latest issue of award-winning Peloton Magazine at pelotonshop.com.